Unlike its eventual successor, The Two Towers, 2002's The Lord of the Rings The Fellowship of the Ring tie-in game wasn't only developed by a different studio, it strangely had nothing to do with its film counterpart in terms of character design or story, instead taking the bulk of its inspiration straight from Tolkien's beloved novel, which in some ways I find frustrating. Because at times, it feels like the game expects you to have in-depth knowledge of the book's plot. Even the film will help a player comprehend the story better because the game brazenly skips over large portions of the narrative. Clearly, that is due to a budget limitation in production time or budget, most likely both. But as a singular experience though, it holds Fellowship back while also giving the impression that the developers either didn't or couldn't do the original tale justice. In other regards, however, I can't help but see how outwardly freeing that must have been for developer Surreal Software. Unlike The Two Towers and the overrated, but nonetheless still fantastic Return of the King, Fellowship wasn't beholden to crowbarring in every single iconic moment or location from the first film in the trilogy. This allowed Surreal to take liberties with the source material and deviate to craft levels that work better for a video game, instead of ticking boxes to produce a more faithful game-to-film adaptation. Working outside of these boundaries allowed the inclusion of places like the Barrow Downs or the Troll Shores, but most importantly of all, Tom motherfucking Bombadil.
Well, my little fellows, you shall come to the house of Tom Bombadil.
Where?
Time enough for questions around the supper table.
Bombadil is the Lord of the Rings version of Peeves. Change my mind. It's not all flagons of ale and pipeweed though. Veering away from the cinematic version means that sound-wise looks like this. You can chalk that up to early 2002 graphics, but the Two Towers game came out in the same year, and it is nowhere near as nightmare-inducing as this abomination.
Don't hurt me!
So far, I think it's reasonable to say that Surreal took a unique approach to Fellowship, one that mostly lands, aside from a few caveats. That is all surplus to requirement, however, because more important than anything else is the gameplay. And this is where Fellowship gets even more contentious for me. Throughout your journey, you'll be playing back and forth as Frodo, Aragorn, and the silliest looking Gandalf ever committed to screen, and that includes this one.
You are the one who has the ring now.
Frodo's sections lean much heavier towards stealth and puzzles, and Aragorn's puts more focus onto the action, while Gandalf's falls somewhere in between the two. To put it simply, Fellowship's combat is about as basic as it gets. You can use your one close-up melee attack, or stand back and use your one ranged attack from a safer distance. Both Gandalf and Aragorn also share the ability to knock an enemy to the ground before taking them out with a fairly satisfying finishing move. Generally though, it's only really Gandalf that presents variation to the combat mechanics. By utilizing his staff, he can launch fireballs and bursts of lightning towards his enemies, as well as performing a simple health regeneration spell. I'm not going to say that any of these spells save the combat from feeling stale after a longer play session, but they do provide some of the gameplay's more impactful moments. If there's any aspect of this game that truly crippled my enjoyment, it's the initial stealth section. Just like in the book, to escape the Shire with the One Ring, Frodo and friends must avoid detection by the Nazgul. This being a video game adaptation, this of course takes the form of repeatedly crouch sneaking past the ring wraiths more times than can possibly be necessary. Seriously, I will not forget this goddamn Shire level as long as I live, which I hope is a very short amount of time now. Maybe I was just an impatient child, but I couldn't stand this stealth section then, and I sure as hell still hate it as an adult. It's surprisingly fortunate that the levels are fairly linear, which usually, in this day and age of gaming, is considered a bad thing. But in Fellowship's case, far from it, because rather aggravatingly, many of Fellowship's objectives consist of running back and forth looking for random items. This does ease up towards the latter part of the game, but it can still be a struggle to reach that point when the early game drags so much. So in that regard, the straightforward design of each area becomes a blessing when you're tasked with once again traipsing around looking for random crap to make a fake sleeping hobbit with. Yeah, video games, so fun, so much to fucking end me. Further restricting the need for exploration as well as long-term investment is the severe lack of any collectibles or upgrades. A game set in Middle-earth is ripe for interesting journal entries or hidden artifacts that reveal tidbits about the characters or world. And yet, there's not a collectible in sight. The Two Towers tie-in may have also neglected to expand on the lore through collectibles, but the relatively bare-bones upgrade system allowed for a sense of progression that continuously encouraged getting better. When it comes to Fellowship, talk about a wasted opportunity.
Fool of a took! Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
We're nearing the end of our journey now, partly because I'm running out of things to say, but primarily because I'm recording this at 4 in the morning and I'm starting to lose my voice yelling about the fucking Shire. And just like Fellowship's ending, it's probably gonna be disappointing. If I propositioned you to decide how and where you'd end a game based on the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, you might say Boromir's final stand at Amon Hen. You know, just like the film and the book. Or, you know, you could just, I don't know, throw a fucking fell beast in the way randomly and say, there you go. It's a sudden final boss and an ending that feels as strange as it is stupid. It's most likely there due to budgetary reasons, but that doesn't stop the game ending on a dour, disappointing note. Unlike its slightly younger sibling, the Fellowship of the Ring possibly tried too hard to change the formula. While the Two Towers delights in its simplistic beat-em-up roots, Fellowship feels more unfocused and mashed together in its approach to game design. They obviously didn't have the time to truly perfect either the stealth or the combat. And while a developer with more time, experience, and more than anything else, money, might have been able to refine those aspects, or failing that, have the foresight to see that scrapping one of them might have been the best direction, it doesn't change the fact that Fellowship took its core idea and ran with it, for better or for worse. Tolkien once said that the moral of his timeless work was ennoblement of the ignoble, which is to say, in non-pretentious terms, he wanted to highlight average people achieving extraordinary feats. And I'm not sure I would call Surreal's Fellowship of the Ring extraordinary, but I can't help but acknowledge the pure love that must have gone into pushing out this bizarre relic of a game out on time. But now I want to ask if you guys have ever played the Fellowship of the Ring game, and what you think of it. Would also love to know what your favourite Lord of the Rings game is. Maybe if there is still call for it, I'll take a look at some of them as well. Let us know any and all of your thoughts down in the comments, and if you did want to support the channel even more than you already have, please do feel free to leave a like, or even subscribe for more content like this. Plus, if you wanted to financially support new content, the link to our Patreon is in the description. We appreciate any and all of your support in whatever form it takes. Thanks for watching the video, and cheers.